Thank you for joining us on the usage-based insurance discussion. And we have Matt Kinzer. He's from Only. And would you like to speak a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all for having me. We're really excited to be here. And just to clarify, this is UBI for the cannabis industry. I couldn't resist. No, thank you so much for having me. My name is Matt. I'm from Only. Only, very, very specifically, is a platform for individuals to sell their personal certified data to insurers. We are operating on trust and transparency and finding an equitable relationship between insurers and their customers. That's kind of our foundation. Prior to Only, and I feel very intimidated being in the room with all these industry professionals because I'm not an industry guy. I'm a marketing guy. I worked for 6 years at a place called Dollar Shave Club and had a lot of fun there. But the through line between Dollar Shave Club and Only, and the reason why I'm here, I didn't just stumble in this room and get mic'd up, although it might appear to be so, is that we really, although we sold razors and personal grooming products, we were primarily a data company. We are fixated on the customer experience, and that is what I love to dig into, pour over data, qualitative and quantitative data, to better understand people and those behaviors. So we did so at Dollar Shave Club. We did so for a variety of reasons, whether those are making a more personalized experience, or making sure that we are our efforts are laddering up to particular business-specific KPIs like growth, retention, and monetization, specifically upsell and cross-sell. So within the concept of Only, we saw that there was a lot of opportunity and crossover through the similar actions there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's consumers, right, and data about them, and how do you take it in and use it to help your customer? That's what it all comes down to, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I think that data, and as we'll get into in the next couple of slides, is kind of the four-letter word. It's a little, it's got a little bit of kind of the questions around that, and differences in attitude, person to person. I think we're kind of entering a new phase wherein the understanding of personal data and the utilization of personal data is taking on a different sophistication than it did before. So really happy to dig into this conversation, and of course the awesome research that you and your team did.
Awesome, thank you so much. So let's start with what we see here. So you brought this one research into my attention from Policy Genius, and that was totally different from what we had found. What is your take on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Right off the bat, when I met Ash, we presented him with counter data immediately to his work. But as we will talk about in our conversation here, is that there's a lot of nuance to this. So through Policy Genius, and this is released in October of this month of 2022, the question up there for the audience is, would you download and use an app that collects data about your driving behavior and location if your auto insurance company offered a discount for doing so? And I believe that is 68%. No discount is worth that. So this is, of course, not as nuanced of a research paper as you presented, but as you can see, that there are particular attitudes around data. What are people hungry for, essentially? And we'll talk about some more of those concerns, but I would love to dig into what we see on the left, because I think it presents that a really awesome opportunity that really necessitates a more nuanced approach.
Yes, absolutely. So let's start this, like looking at the data that we have on the left, right? We asked a very clear set of questions. It was not a one question with 3 options and you choose one. We had a very comprehensive set of questions where you had to rank different aspects about privacy and transparency and your willingness to accept data-driven products and willingness to share information with your auto insurance carriers, for that matter. And what we found here is 17.7%. That's a very precise number, but with a plus of minus 5% margin, had UBI already, and they were out of the study. It's like, okay, you have UBI, you liked it, you are in. Let's talk to the other 83% or so who don't have UBI. And at first, when you looked at this number this year, it looked very high, right? About 45% of the population who does not have UBI was willing and open to look at the data. The other 38% said, no way, not giving you anything. So we had to drill down deeper to try to figure out exactly where things are. And this brings back one of the quotes that Bob Hartwig brought up, right? So demand for information across the board is very, very high. So you need to be willing to share data and have it both ways. And that's something that we are trying to figure out. What was your take on, when you saw this, the dichotomy? How did you respond? Was it favorable? How did it go?
I think that there's just more. Everybody in this room would love to find a silver bullet to solve our problems, our data acquisition problems, right? However, you're going to find people along a spectrum. And I think that this is what that represents, the fact that there is no silver bullet. I think moving forward in terms of strategies, you have to implement a number of different things. But mostly the fact that, and then what really popped for me is that movable center, better understanding what those concerns were on a human level and how do you address those within a product. So speaking to Only, in the platform we've created, we started with mileage. We knew the importance of mileage as it pertains to auto insurance. And in doing so, we only isolate these data points that are hard to get and are really valuable. And that equitable exchange that I talked about earlier is between the insurance company and the individual. So it's not going through a third-party data broker. And for us, that kind of ladders up to it's a solution to one of the concerns, that we'll get into. But I think as we move forward and as these technologies mature, they need to really operate on a very human level and better understanding what those concerns are, because they are nuanced, but they are changing and those attitudes are shifting.
Yep, absolutely. So ultimately, if you have to summarize everything that we just talked about, it's all about the question, the options given, the granularity of options, the pivots that we can draw from those questions, as well as the quality of data that you actually pull out, right? So, and those are the things that we'll be talking about as we go along, right?
Absolutely. And what we can kind of agree on, not all data is equal, right?
Yeah. What has been your experience with the consumer concerns?
Sure. Through the lens of Only, when we take a look and interview through user feedback and user calls, when we interview them as to what do they like about the platform. And the experience we'll get into in a couple of slides, but just for the context of everybody in this room, mileage is the data point that's being bought and sold between the individual and the insurer. And in doing so, that action on the individual side is taking 2 pictures of their car based on a cadence of the insurer's wish. So typically it's like every 28 days, right? So technically what we created through our mileage, or our approach with the mileage data is a retroactive pay-per-mile program. Now, talking to people who have had telematics solutions and utilize telematics solutions, talking through what did they like about it, they love the set and forget it about it. There is also a huge concern of just being tracked and location monitoring all the time, and also kind of more nuance. They didn't like being graded on how they were driving, right? It's one of those things. And you start to drill down further into, I braked really hard so I didn't hit a child who was out in the street, or I was keeping up with the flow of traffic, or in one particular user study, user feedback call, this woman, she worked 3rd shift. So she inherently in her life is driving at a time that's deemed a little bit more dangerous. So through none of her control, she gets dinged in terms of her overall driving score, right? So what we found, and to answer your question here, is that transparency, much like you have here, was the overriding factor of why do you choose a platform like Only versus telematics, or pure telematics. The same thing is privacy. So that's why we always try to lead, we do lead with a privacy-first approach.
Yeah, absolutely. And to quote what we heard in the earlier session on blockchain, Tram said the top two concerns about consumers is, she mentioned data privacy and security was number one, and data interoperability was number two. Can we take that privacy and security apart, and do you think this one does it for us?
The only solution?
No, the slide that we're talking about.
Privacy and security, I don't know. I think that, yes, you can, but I think that's maybe a bit more than I'm able to answer right now.
Okay, that's fine. So let me just try to take a stab at it, because
Sure.
we designed the survey. A bunch of people in this room were kind of like helping out with that, right? So again, expounding on that earlier thing about like, well, what was the question and what did you do with the response answer? So if you had to rate on a 7-star scale your likelihood to change a behavior, whether it is providing data or to switch to a usage-based insurance, you need to have a framework to try and build on top of it, right? So we use 6 factors that are laid out by GDPR in terms of what is privacy, security, and data handling mean in terms of regulation. And then layered on top of that, the questions, and then when we went out and surveyed out close to 1,000 people, we got some answers, and if we leave out the 5%, like things that were within 5% range, which basically means you can't really tell the difference, we could come with these top 4 items that stand up. So when people say, we are not going to share data, no, there's no matter what question you ask them, it really doesn't get you anywhere. But if they are okay with sharing data, then what matters? What will change you to switch your behavior, to adopt more? We found that the number one thing was transparency. The carrier being transparent and saying what is the data used for, what is the exact data that is captured, and how is it stored, how is it exactly used, the implications and impact that they will be running through. And of course, the last and the most important thing was communication. Does the carrier tell you what is it going to do with that data? What's the data lifetime and things like that? Now, those are the things that you work around, right?
Yes, exactly. So for us, transparency ladders up to knowing the data point that you're selling, who you're selling it to, and why, right? So just those 3 simple questions, three simple answers there. And I think that, as I become more, of course, coming from the CPG world, whenever I went for an oil change prior to my time at Only and understanding more about auto insurance, I thought it was just a simple oil change. Now I know that that's more of a data mining opportunity, right? And that's happening. It's all going on while I sip my coffee and wait for my car to be completed, right? So it's really interesting to see how, regardless of your input, this data is being collected. Now, for me, speaking just as a guy here, like that doesn't make me feel great. It doesn't make me feel good. And I think that when you operate with as much as we do with Only, we are doing a lot to empower our customers, our members, essentially, to understand the value of their data. Now, given the fact that I just gave this very, very rough example, you provided your own example here of something that went viral online.
Yep, absolutely. So if they get the data and act on it, if the carrier act on it, it causes a storm on social media, right? I've picked one up from an older time where somebody's rating changed just because that data mining opportunity resulted in something pretty bad for the consumer, and that was not taken really well, right?
Right. I can't imagine this person is still a State Farm customer. Maybe they are, but it just doesn't make you feel good. And I think as an insurer, a lot of this is relationship management, and that's really based on trust and transparency.
And that's where we come back to the transparency bit, right? So let me just go back to where we were. Yeah, that's why transparency as a bucket has got more than just like a policy statement on a website, or it's just like a continuous dialogue that we kind of
Yeah, absolutely. How about, we've talked about how Only really drilled down on mileage. I would love to hear from you about the importance of mileage, utilizing that as a proxy for risk.
Yeah, absolutely. So just talking things through, right? So insurance as an industry is all about exposure. So the potential for loss to happen and the causes that could happen, right? So for an auto, it is all about like the vehicle, what is it capable of and what is it going to do, the road, where is it driven and what happens on those roads, and the person driving it, right? Everybody clubs telematics into the last right bucket and then says, oh, this is all bad. But there are these other two buckets that kind of like contain a whole lot of information that needs to be collected and used to assess the exposure, the risk exposure. And there's two pieces, right? One is you could be hit by a loss, or you're not charging the right premium, or you're charging too much for somebody who is at a risk to run away and who's really a good customer. And how do you know the difference between those different segments, or like offering that personalization? That's where we kind of like come in and think about risk, right? So AIS has a rating plan. I'm going to use an example of Illinois, and mileage tends to be a decent indicator of where how we can put all of those three together without really going deeper. So our actuarial team, and some of us are here, have put together a plan which is approved by the state of Illinois, and you can see that the range premium, the factors fall in the range of between 9 and 15%. But if you look at just the driving between 7,000 a year to 12,000 a year, the range is much, much steeper, much higher than for the entire factors. So a driver who's reporting slightly less or slightly more falls into a different bucket, because you look at 1,000-mile band for rating, and that impacts your pricing and therefore your ability to retain that customer. So having a deeper understanding of risk and just trying to figure out exactly where does a driver fall can be beneficial, right? And that's something that you can help, right?
Yes, absolutely. So we really just isolated the fact that mileage is it's a massively important data point to get right? So currently, the experience is to offer, when you get a new policy, these are the mileage bands, my best guess, right? So no one's going to go out of their way and over-purport things. I think it's just kind of human nature to, whether that's to gain an advantage or not, just you under-report. You just naturally do that. Now, looking at through the lens of UBI, I think there are a couple of things to keep in mind. One, of course, you can price more appropriately. On the individual's end, though, there might be an opportunity. Their rates might go up based on how they're actually driving, right? So that's kind of an interesting wrinkle in this experience.
Yeah. So what we're talking about is not really a new idea, right? As an industry, we have kind of like done a lot of work, and there are letters that come to consumers saying, how much, what is your mileage? And then we also get data from different organizations just to complement whatever our understanding is, just so that we assess and put somebody in a bucket, if you will, within your rating plan. Or we just default and say, here's an average miles, and that's what I'm going to use for my consumers, and that's the number that you arrive at. So how do you, like bringing your CPG experience in, how do you best segment your customers?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a great question. I think there are a couple of, you take a look at the data that you have at your disposal, right? So for us at Dollar Shave Club, a lot of it was zero-party data. We sent a lot of surveys out to better understand what were the grooming behaviors in the household. You can actually layer on and isolate as a secondary data point just actual behaviors. Their exhibited purchasing patterns and everything, right? So I think through this lens, you can better understand mileage by speaking directly to your customer. And that's kind of at Only, we kind of operate on the hypothesis of what if you just asked? What if you just asked for them to report their mileage? And in a fair and equitable way, they get a couple of bucks. It's kind of what, for lack of better terms, some of our partners call pocket change. But you include them in the data game. You give them a seat at the table, and you allow them to kind of better understand what they're doing. They're interacting more so and better understanding their own behavior, and also transferring very valuable data back to the insurer, who can then make a more personalized policy for them.
Awesome. So you have this product in market already across the globe, right?
Yes.
What has your experience been with the receptivity to that kind of like seat at the table?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I can speak to, I think, one really kind of coming from the CPG world and seeing retention rates kind of start to decline, especially within subscription services. The retention that we're seeing at Only with a top 10 partner in the UK is about 80%. So this is about 6 months into that partnership. So 80% retention with the program participants. And then you start to drill down. This isn't really a set it and forget it thing. They have to they'll get reminders to go out and take a picture of their car every 28 days. But what we found, and what's really interesting, just the start of everything, is that it's a very, very interesting closed feedback loop, like a positive feedback loop. So every month you have this interaction with your customer. And every month you have the opportunity to essentially surprise and delight them by bringing a new lens on their own behavior, which is really interesting. We can get into that in the future slides, but by giving them an opportunity to positively engage and giving our insurer partners an opportunity to positively engage, you're meeting them where they are in a very surprising way.
I like the concept of positive engagement, because insurers are not used to too much positive engagement, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it's really interesting. And thinking through the lens of myself as an individual, I hear from my insurer maybe when my payment went through, and that's about it, or I have a new bill due. And it's a really, when you kind of zoom out and you look at the role of insurance and the impact of insurance in individuals' lives, it's a massive line item on a household budget. And it's something that the agents that I've spoken to really strive to make a more personalized experience. So now, looking at the Only platform and drilling into the mileage experience, you go from the traditional mindset of set it and forget it. Let's pray. Let's not poke the bear, because if we reach out to them, they might reconsider their policy and go elsewhere. Now it's an opportunity to positively engage with them every 28 days and actually reward them for their driving.
Awesome. So before we continue, and you can show, give everyone a preview of what the Only experience is like. I'd like to just take us one step back, and as a carrier, and we've had these conversations before as well, how do you know where you stand with respect to peers? So because when we heard Bob Hartwig say, there's a whole lot of insurers, at least in the UBI space, that are in the test phase, and the leaders are in the test phase. It's not just every insurer, but it's the leaders with the CMTs of the world are in the test phase. So do you think it would be a good idea to just have a model where you can figure out where do you lie on a spectrum, and we kind of thought through it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really important to better understand what you want with the data, how you want to acquire that data, and of course what your resources are.
Yeah.
Let's check it out.
While we got talking, we kind of realized that it was very important to try to just look at where we come from, right? Insurance in the old days was all about filling out a form, going and doing your work, and the underwriter coming back and trusting what you provided, and then just rating you based on what it was. Then the next phase of this was, this allowed you to get segmented. You did some verification and then try to make sure that you got the pricing right. The second step was getting to a more personalized level, which was you don't rely only on the information that is provided by the end driver, but verified it through other means. And there's a whole lot of data providers that do exactly that. That's where most of the insurance providers today kind of like operate, right? The next one is like having that periodic assessment. Now, this is something that we kind of like came up and said, oh, this is changing. This is taking it to a next level, because it's not just passive periodic assessment. You just trying to figure out, looking at different numbers, like mining the data while you're getting your car serviced and trying to figure out, okay, what do I do next? Because if you do something, it has a problem. If you don't do something, well, you're taking more risk, and then you just have risk at your hand. So there's something that you can do about it by rewarding good behavior and taking that to the next level, creating a positive touch point. And then finally, we have the continuous monitoring for some period sometimes, as well as for extended periods or forever. That's the world of when people talk about usage-based, you're talking about the last step. All these three steps really make it work, and there's a space for all of them to work. And you are kind of like coming in and providing a vehicle or a mechanism to like just up-level your game, but not quite take it to the upper level. Now, this has an impact on transparency as well, right? Because as your research and experience shows.
Yes, absolutely. I think the massive, a huge element, I keep using the word massive, sorry about that. A big element for us is the concept of optionality. You know, and I think that when we take a look at the broad spectrum as you present it here, it can easily fall into a good, better, best, right? Wherein everybody's chasing the carrot of the intrusive telematics, the continuous monitoring. Let's hope that's the silver bullet, right? However, we saw in the first slide there's a spectrum of very nuanced attitudes around data being collected and the transfer of that data. So where only, of course, falls in is hopefully within the middle realm there, the personalized and periodic assessment. And this is really acting or empowering the individual to take a more active approach in the transfer of that data.
Yep. So when you say periodic assessment, is that 28 days? Is that fixed? Is that like flexible?
It's completely flexible based on the data point and a partner. Currently, 28 days just every month. It has been kind of our go-to cadence. And it's also, you know, you think through the concept of a relationship management. You want to make sure that you're showing up in a very positive, impactful way throughout the calendar year. Of course, you can do that quarterly, but
yeah. So how about you tell us a little bit more about Only and your solution?
Absolutely. So we are a platform that allows insurers to secure and obtain certified unique data, right? So these are data points that we've highlighted that are really difficult to get, as we've really talked about mileage. It's hard to get right. There are a lot of different opportunities to do that. What we're proposing is a platform where insurers can work directly with their customers to just ask. So that's what that is. The biggest thing for me, especially coming from a customer experience background, is what are we giving to the individual? How are we empowering the individual here? How are we including them, giving them a seat at the table? And that's giving them control over the collection, the storage, and use of their data. You know, it really ladders up to a lot of the 4 concerns you brought up earlier that are pertaining to the GDPR compliance.
Yep, awesome. So how does the solution look like? So would you like to just walk us through that?
Absolutely. So this would be a mileage check-in. Start on the left, go work our way to the right. Big takeaways here are that this is a very simple thing for an individual to do. They'll get a reminder every 28 days to take a picture of their car, actually 2 pictures of their car. And that's all that we're looking into. In terms of validating this data, what does certified mean in this realm? This is self-reported data that's then validated and verified through AI. So when they take pictures, there is location elements attached to those pictures, EXIF data, and that'll be validated on the back end for us. This will then be transferred to our partner via a secure partner dashboard. So all of those data points that are crucial to making these decisions and making that a more personalized experience are clearly visible and interactable, I guess,
Yeah.
with a partner. So on the left, we have our 2 prompts to take a picture of your odometer or your car. Of course, clearly, it's the license has to be in place because that's an identifier. You can choose the flow. We don't lock you if you're more of an odometer first person. Doesn't really matter. You can do whatever you want to do. Then you upload your pictures. On the third screen is your timeline. So this is a complete timeline of the data points that you've uploaded that have been certified, and of course the money that you've made as an individual. It was really important for us to offer whole dollars. These aren't fractions of dollars, not cents. The mode currently is, and it can be anything, is an Amazon gift card. So those whole dollars can be redeemed at any point by the user.
Okay. So in your current customer base, let me just make sure that I get it right. Mm-hmm. Do they use your app or do they integrate into their own app, which is this one additional thing that comes up?
We have done both in the past. We do have our own apps, our own native apps currently.
Okay. So so the consumer downloads and installs an app, they get a notification which can be configured, as I understand. You can do it for 28 days, you can do it every 15 days. It really doesn't matter once you configure it. You follow the prompts, take pictures, send it down, then you build a timeline, and then you get rewards.
Exactly.
So how do you decide on the rewards piece?
Yeah, that's through our partnerships. So that's all through actuarial data with the insurers that we've partnered with.
Awesome.
So something I left off here is that there's a check-in reward, but there's also low mileage bonuses based on real numbers from actuarials. So it is that retroactive pay per mile program we were talking about earlier.
Yeah. So looking at the mileage bands that I laid out for our program, would that give you enough data to institute a program within the Only platform?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can. I think with specific to the bands themselves, those also can be completely, tailored to our partners' goals.
And the next question, it's kind of like making sure that everybody gets the breadth of everything that you're offering. It's not just the license plate and the odometer, right?
That's correct. Although those are present in the prompts there, as you can see, you're getting pictures of the condition of the vehicle, and that was one of the elements of risk that Ash had brought up earlier in the conversation. So, of course, through transparency, the user would then know that the condition of the vehicle will also be a data point that would be paid for, but also utilized here. That's the biggest thing for us, to make sure that they know exactly what their data point's being used for.
And who owns the data that you collect?
Essentially, it'll be the partners, and I guess it's copy, right? So we're getting into a territory of data ownership that I'm not necessarily a professional on, but I believe that there are 2 copies. So one would be owned by the individual, the other by the partner. So when they're in terms of access and rectification, there would be an opportunity by the individual to request for that data to be deleted.
Okay, so you are kind of making that playing field level, exactly answering the concerns that were raised in the earlier thing about who owns it. Well, the people who it matters to own the data, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, perfect. So that's all we had for today, I guess. So why don't we open it up for questions from the audience?
I was wondering, what states can you use some mileage-based programs in?
So that's a very good question. I'm assuming that question is for the states, the program that we have as AAIS. We are currently approved in 6 states. I can give you a list. I had it, but I can't remember it off the top of my head. But Illinois is definitely one of them. So Illinois, Wisconsin, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Missouri, and Texas. And I might be missing one, but that should be the one where you can use our mileage bands and use a discount or a payback or right sizing of the consumer into the correct band for accuracy.
It's not necessarily an all or nothing in terms of pure telematics versus just the paper submission there. Another thing, just as a marketer, just as a person that works to create these one-to-one interactions and relationships and influence behavior, like the opportunity for what I really find exciting, about the Only platform is an opportunity to create multiple positive engagements throughout the year. And then I think that's something, as I speak more and more to insurers and specifically agents, that this are really, they're grasping at straws sometimes to figure out ways to reach out to their customers. I had one agent in particular talk about the fact that he sent out Valentine's Day emails. And this is coming, a Valentine's Day email coming from your insurance agent. So this is a really interesting opportunity to meet them where they are. Meet your customer where they are every 28 days or whatever the cadence may be. And I think that within the context of that recurring engagement, you can see that there are opportunities for cross-sell, upsell, retention, and also influencing behavior. Just one really brief example of influencing behavior here is a partner in the UK wherein we specifically targeted high mileage drivers. So these are folks that are driving more than 9,000 miles. 9,000 miles. I think that's what their range is. And we saw that after our 6 months of usage, about 66% of them had fallen out of that driving rate, that mileage band. And when you start to ask them more so about kind of why, is this kind of a right siding of reporting, which is certainly part of that, but it's also an opportunity for them to really think about why they're driving and how much they're driving, especially if they have an opportunity to make money and of course make more money based on low mileage bonuses.
And it's not a very large sum of money that's given back, right?
No, and I think it's again comes up for these real numbers from actuarials that are coming up with these things. But with that one in particular, you can earn a max of 185 pounds per year, and that was enough to motivate 80% retention rate after 6 months, and of course. The 66% reduction in mileage driven. So it's really kind of an interesting channel if you start thinking about this as a new channel to interact with customers in a new and a surprising way and ultimately positive. And I think the last thing that I really wanted to touch on here is that we're just trying to lower the barrier for entry. Of course, you had the stepwise progression of the spectrum of where can you go. And in terms of partnering with something like Only, this is not a huge upfront investment, and it's really it's kind of an extension of your own marketing team, your own customer service team. We create and we maintain all of those on our own. So this is helping anybody who's trying to get into UBI do so in a way that ladders up to the test and learn mentality that we've heard about a lot today.
Awesome. Test and learn is always good idea, right? How long does it take to get a carrier up and running with your application? Yeah,
great question. It's anywhere between, we can, depending on the complexity, anywhere between 2 weeks and a month. And this is something that, making sure I had a direct from the CEO line for you there on that one, so you can hold him to that. But no, that's the entire point of it. It's like this doesn't have to be massively complex. This doesn't have to be a very, very expensive venture for you to learn about how your customers will adopt UBI products.
Awesome. Any other questions from the audience?
Just interestingly, I have a car now that tracks my mileage on. Like, I wonder who's looking at this, and whether if anybody's using the data at all. Because as you started talking, you pulled up the app, and I've driven 2,000 miles. And what is that? Are they going to raise rates? And then the other just concept that I was thinking is, you might end up usage based. You probably get a better driver. As opposed to your adverse selection, you probably get good selection because somebody's willing to share the data.
Yeah.
They're probably driving less mileage, and they're probably I'm not willing to share my data.
No, totally.
Not just the mileage.
Right.
Yeah, that's fair. And we did a study of 21 programs like that are in the market today, some of the leading ones as well. And we went through the fine print of what do they tell you about what they're doing, right? They are at a very high level. Their privacy data management policies mimic any consumer website. I mean, you could go to Target and their policy looks the same as a usage base. Target is not looking at what you're doing while you're going about your business, right? They look at like what you're doing on the website. A car is something that you go about doing the business. You can't have the same policy. So we were quite harsh in grading all the programs, and I would be willing to share our findings with you guys. And that is like just a 5-month-old research, and we want to refresh it and republish it so you can take a look at what is the biggest opportunity. It's just communication, right? We had this conversation about tram saying they leave it in a silo, it's there, they want to use it at some point, but they just don't know how. That's probably what's going to happen. Maybe somebody who shouldn't be having access to it has access to it as well today. But you knowing what's going to happen to your data, if it's got a retention policy, if it's got a life, you will be a lot more comfortable. And yeah, you fall in the bracket where you say, hell no, but at some point you know that you've got to trade. But is it a fair trade? And that was one of the biggest hurdles for people who said, no, not giving your data. And the answer was, they don't trust what's going to happen with the data.
What are the guardrails for the partners, data guardrails for the partners that are involved in this? In other words, if information goes to a carrier, the carrier can sell that information to a third party, another third party downstream.
So that is what you have to, so the question was, what are the guardrails for managing data? So the California data handling regulation, which is modeled after the GDPR, you have to explicitly state your data handling. What is collected, where is it stored, and who is it sold for? And you have to explicitly get permission from the consumer on whose behalf you're collecting the data. So they have a concept of the data principal and the data controller. And you become the data controller, and you have to have guardrails about what the other controller who you pass the data on has got to have. So I'm assuming that you kind of like do that out of the platform, right? So they become a data controller in terms of managing their interaction and getting the data transfer. But then as a carrier, you end up being one of the controllers because you pay out for it. And then if you want to pass it on, you have to get an explicit permission to actually do it. Otherwise you cannot. You are in violation of data handling.
It must be an opt-in.
It has to be an opt-in. It cannot be an automatic opt-out, yeah. At least for GDPR. Different states have different rules within the US.
Let's say that you're the insurance carrier, you're insuring this auto, you've got, again, more than this telematics on it, and there's a car accident. At what point are you going to have to turn over that data to, in the course of the lawsuit, somebody's deal?
Discovery. That's a complete can of worms that we have to open. Let's take that as a topic for one of the next sessions. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, actually, I think tracking total miles makes sense in a way. But I did participate in our carrier's telematics program for a discount, right? I think I got into 2 or 3 accidents because of that. Because you're very, very conscious, and you touch the brake, it flags. So you're basically trying to be very careful not to touch the brake. And it will, with respect to data access, right? I know they're wrong in terms of the way they codify. You touch the brake, they say 3 severe braking hits. I said, look, I can prove it to you. I have an accelerometer. I can tell you I didn't do it. But I call them and say, you tell me the data, they won't give it to you. They just say you have 3 weeks. And so you become very conscious. In the same way, when something happens, I have a very good, at least I want to claim, I have a good reply. So I brake ahead of time, and so that I avoid the accident. But they are going to penalize you because, oh, you put a hard brake. And whereas I'm trying to be careful ahead of time. So some of these things I don't, actually I used to work on autonomous vehicle research, self-driving cars. I think there is a big disparity between how they are kind of trying to use the data and actually work.
Absolutely. So you bring up a good point. So what constitutes hard braking? Of the 21 programs that we looked at, one had a description. So braking at I think it was 25 miles per second squared and higher was the thing. And now how do you know that you're braking there? There's no meter that tells you that you're doing that, right? So that is true. So that it was very, very difficult. And I use the Snapchat program as well for myself. And I live in Seattle area and we have these terraced roads. I went to Seattle downtown once during my trial period and I just passed 4 traffic signs which you have to stop. And you just go up and stop and then you have to go quickly and then stop again. And it marked me down for hard braking. And it is like, well, that's normal braking in Seattle. You can't do any better. It's no different. It's gravity against you. You have to do it. But yeah, and for all the trouble that they went through, I got a $30 discount on an annual basis. It's like, was it worth it?
Pressure's up too, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So thank you so much. This has been a fantastic conversation. We would love to continue this. Thank you everyone for taking the time and staying here to so late. And thanks, Matt, for having us.
Thank you so much for having us. Really appreciate it.